Hi, my name is Keith. Welcome to my garden. I want to give you a little bit of overview about this garden. First a little bit about me. I've been doing landscape designing since I was a kid. I got mesmerized when I was in the first grade and I grew my first bean plant. To me, that was a magical time. I've never stopped being interested in plants since then. From that first time that I was in, well, it wasn't first grade, it was kindergarten, let's say, I've always been interested in design. I always wanted to find something that I really could create something magnificent in. And I was lucky enough, after years of being in different places, renting different places, that I found this property. In a lot of ways, it's kind of your idyllic setting. It's a small little house off to one side. It's in a canyon with a creek that meanders through it. And I was sort of blown away when I first got this. And to me, this was my, how can I say it, my chance to really do the sort of job that I'd always dreamed of. I've worked with lots of clients and lots of properties, and sometimes you don't always get a chance, as lots of artists know, they don't always get a chance to do really what they can. And so this was my chance to do that, to really create something, and I haven't stopped creating, and I have the vision in my head. I really haven't stopped. I haven't really finished the property. I know all the things that I want to do, and there's lots of parts of the garden that I designed years ago that haven't been uncovered, that have been covered up by stuff, but they're just waiting to be uncovered so that this whole property can kind of shine. So we're gonna start by walking over. You can see like the bridge right here. You can see the stone wall, the steps that go down to the creek, another wall here, and then we'll go over to the other side of the garden and we'll look up and you can see sort of the overview of the garden. So let's go take a look. So here's a creek on either side. It runs year-round, so there's always water in it, there's always sound in it. So here's kind of the center part of the garden, and my cameraman can kind of pan around, and you can see this large stone wall that I have. So this wall is one of the first design elements that I put in. I built the house for the first 2 years, put a foundation on it, built a deck, and then after that it was time to take on the landscaping, something I was really passionate about and really wanted to do. So with there wasn't really a master plan when I designed this. It really was something that I had in my head, and of course I laid out sort of the wall in, like, I think I used spray paint or something like that, but I laid out this wall that went throughout. It really goes from one edge of the property almost to the the other edge of the property. So it not only gives me more flat area, it creates more functional area in the garden, ties the whole garden together, helps to tie the whole garden together. But you can see from the perspective, I dug out this whole area here in front of us. Behind us is the garden shed, and I came out in front of this large oak tree. It was much more magnificent looking at one time. Unfortunately, half of it fell off, but you still have an oak tree there. So this is sort of the centerpiece of the garden in lots of respects. So the wall goes around it, and then it curves up the other side, giving me access to my truck to pull across the other side. And then we have a bunch of plants that cascade over, a lot of California natives, drought-tolerant stuff, plants that I basically came across my career that I want to incorporate into the garden. And even like jobs that I do, I'll have an idea of a plant that I have in mind, I'll use it, maybe it won't work so well, and you'll have to take it up and put something else in. So there's been a lot of experimentation here. So having explained that, let's go ahead, we'll look at some of the details and some of the more intricate parts, maybe like maybe what I would consider like the vignettes of the garden, the how can I say it? If you were to tell a story to someone, these would be the parts of the story that I would be sharing with you. So let's go take a look. Here's a orange tree over here. So this little area here, off the sort of main pathway to the house, is a curved wall that sets off from the creek. And this dry laid, it's one of the best pieces of work that we've done on the property. It was one of the latter pieces of work that we've done on the property. And we put the wall in first. Actually, it's been such a long time, I don't know if we did the steps. I think we put the steps in first, and then we put the wall in. And we come over here, you can take a look. The steps just happen to go underneath the boat, this sort of arch of the tree. I don't know if you can pick up on that. As you walk down here, I'm a little bit too tall, but some of the kids can walk underneath there. Walk underneath the tree, and you go down to the creek. So that's a pretty great feature, I think. Again, that arch was just there, so it was sort of serendipitous that I was able to design this wall with these steps that happen to just lead underneath this large buckeye tree that's here. And I don't know, did we get a chance to look at the creek wall over here, the creek? But yeah, let me explain a few things about how I got inspired by this space. It's a very natural setting and just lends itself to curves. I like curves. I think curves tend to be more dynamic. They're more interesting to look at. So it wasn't a stretch for me to design a garden that had curves, and I think in a lot of ways the creek it definitely influenced my design of the garden, not only consciously when I was designing things, as I can see sort of like parts of a puzzle. And it's like, okay, I've got a large curve over here. I need to sort of emulate it with a wall that I have like in the back of my house where I curve this large wall. And so a lot of ways these kind of feed off each other. If you can see them tied together, you've got a large creek, natural creek, that again serpentines and winds its way through almost the middle of the property, or maybe a third of the property on one side, and then we got a large stone wall that does the same thing. It's curving throughout the whole property. So that's where I started, and after that I put in the pathways, and the pathways themselves actually curve and meander through the property. So we'll turn around. I'll share a few of the plants, but I really want to share the design of the garden. And after that, we'll talk about, maybe in the second video, we'll go into more detail about some of the plants. But you have to, if you're going to start a really good design, you have to start with the hardscaping. You have to start with the bones of the garden, something that's going to last a long time. Plants sort of come and go. Maybe trees going to last a little bit longer. But you need to start with the bones of the garden. Get it in, because that's going to hold the garden together, where the plants are not going to do that. So plants are a little bit secondary to me. I like plants a lot, but I think I'm a little bit more in love with the design and how it impacts you. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the plants, but not too much. Now, here's a path, again, curves up and around the garden. Took a while to sort of lay this out, because on the back side of the house there wasn't a lot of space, but I think I curved it well enough. You'll see as we go around the back side of the house. And then up the hill, there's a set of steps that lead up to the top. But so we've got this curving pathway. We have this curving border that wraps around the two trees. There's a hammock that's underneath there. that's sort of an ideal placement. And then we've got this Campania Perscarsiana, which has a real lovely flower that's blooming right now. It does a pretty good job of making this sort of a meadow. Some people may have put it on a lawn area, but I didn't really want a lawn area. I wanted something that was a little easier to take care of, a little more natural. And lawns, we use lawns all the time in California. They're not, unless you've got a kid or something like that, they take up too much water. They're too much maintenance. I know people are in love with their lawns, but we have so many other choices. And so, even though this has seen many versions of ground covers, and it probably will see other versions of ground cover, it always looks better, I think, than having a lawn. So we'll walk up on the path. Off to my right, there's a little seating area. Again, the creek's right on the other side, so it's when you sit there, you hear the sound of the creek, and it's for me, it's a very healing place to be. Water is a very healing place to be. We have a hammock over here. Again, you can rest and hear the water. The water feature, unfortunately, that's turned off. It turned off automatically, but it's nice too. Again, a little tricky to bring these steps all the way around, but a little bit of shifting here and there, it works pretty well. I think it works pretty well. So off this one path that's going to lead us, this is the start of the garden wall I told you, that meanders throughout the whole garden. We've got a pathway that leads up the hillside, and as it does that, it curves up and around. It's really kind of a central pathway that leaves you, it curves up and around, and it turned out really nice. I think it turned out really nice. So let's take a look at this wall, which is all dried leaves. It has behind it a gravel, and that has allowed me to plant succulents, and luckily it's allowed these ferns, these five-finger ferns that I had started out underneath this maple tree over here. Those actually just sort of seed themselves with the spores that they have into the wall, and I'm sure as time goes on there's going to need to be more of these ferns that are growing in this wall, which it's like you can't get much better than that. These guys are just fantastic. And I love the delicate nature of these ferns and how it comes out red like that. And these are the fern fronds, I believe from last year right here. A lot of times I'll cut these guys back and have them regrow out, but they're just really nice. This sort of looks like a grotto in some respects. Now, the other thing I like to do in gardens, I like to create something I like to create these sort of whimsical things, so that when you're walking across the garden, you kind of like, you're surprised. It's not, a garden shouldn't be just all formal. You need to have surprise in a garden. And so what I did after I planted a lot of this is I wanted to have that whimsical element in the garden. So I have this, at first it was a snake, and in a lot of ways it's like a snake. So it curves its way through the garden, in amongst this sort of wild growth of the agaves and the flaxes that are up the hill, and some grasses, and we got some salvia that's popping up for some color. And it's taken some time, but I mean, it's a little hard to see from here, but as you look from both sides of the garden, you'll see this, let's call it a serpentine with a sort of a caterpillar head over here with a tongue, that it sort of winds its way through the garden. So it's fun, and I can see a lot. I can see even better out my kitchen window here, but it is a fun element, and I think those are important to have in a garden. And down below, we have a stone pathway that I put in, and I've got this fine gravel that I put in. I put this in a number of years ago, and it sort of needs to get redone. And then I embellished this after I had done all this. I was like, it needs to be a little bit more. So I put these pebbles in that are like spirals that are connected together. And This side turned out really great. This side turned out okay. You can't quite see it as clearly as when it was put in. And I'm hoping at some point I can redo this. I can do it in concrete so it'll last a really long time. But again, it's a fun little garden space to come in. We're going to go ahead and walk up the hill. So we've got this walkway, again from all the stone that I got, probably 20 tons at a time, I got in front of my driveway, and we sorted through these stones, and we picked out the stones, and we had them lettered and numbered, stones that would work as steps, stones that would work as stepping stones, stones that would work in walls, concave, convex, all different. We still have them sorted out, and we have other projects that we have to do. But it helped to sort of, like when we started a project, we started these steps. It's like we had them letters. We had the face of them, whether it was a concave face or convex face. We had them all sorted out, and so we were able to not easily, but more easily put this in. So it really worked well. And again, you have to have the hardscaping in. And then the plants come afterwards. And so there's a lot of lovely plants here, which we'll talk about in another video, but I really want to give you sort of an overview of how I laid out this garden and how important it is to have those initial elements in your garden, that hardscaping put in and done well, so that throughout the whole year you've got a really nice space to live in. So I hope you're enjoying the tour so far. Let's go ahead and we'll walk up the hill. Some mock-horns over here, some native grasses that flow down on either side of the walkway. Makes it a little more interesting. You might be able to see how the stone faces. They have similar, the faces for the one that's down or next to it has a sort of similar face, where this comes out in a point. You can see there's a point on this one and there's a point down below here, and the sides match up so to some degree. So it gives it a very natural look to it. There's the top of the hill. There's a large stone wall that acts as a bench, and then you've got this pathway here. And I want you to come up and take a look. You can see the tail of the snake or the caterpillar up here, and you can imagine it sort of like winding its way through the garden, through the grasses and the flaxes, which I'm very happy and pleased with this composition of the garden. You got a Mexican fuchsia over here, and some deer grasses, some native red bud. Pretty low maintenance, still needs to get weeded and so forth, but it's a really nice composition. And a relaxing place to be. We're right next to some redwood trees that I planted some 20 years ago. So it